So if I can just continue on this, and I know you have something very important to share about the plagues today, I would like to just go and show you this one idea, because again, like we always emphasize, when we study in Hebrew, everything changes. And one of the most important things for a person who really wants to appreciate the Tanakh and who really wants to appreciate these concepts and the beauty of Torah and the wisdom of the God of Israel is to study in Hebrew. And we mentioned a couple of weeks ago,
exactly.
that was actually one of the reasons why there was a fast day on the 8th of Tevet, which is the day that the Torah was translated into Greek, because this whole why our sages said that day was a tragedy, because the whole concept of translation is very, very limited and can easily be misunderstood, and it does not do justice to the original, does not express the depth and the beauty that's being given over. We have Zoom classes every week, and for quite a while now we've been studying the book of Samuel. In fact, we're almost at the conclusion now of 2 Samuel. We've had well over, I guess, about 150 classes in the book of Samuel alone. And one of the things that we try to emphasize is the incredible beauty and meaning of the Hebrew words. And there's so much that the very letters of the words themselves give over that would go completely lost if a person is only reading it in a translation. So it's this whole idea of understanding the nuances of the sacred language of Hebrew is absolutely of paramount significance. So I'd like to show you something, and let's hope I can do this. I always get nervous when I do this. Sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes it does, but I would like to share this with you so that I can at the same time hope that our viewers can see it. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Give me a thumbs up.
Exile.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. Galut.
Right.
Galut.
Okay.
Exile.
So here we have this word, right? The word galut. It's a very important word. Gimel, Lamed, Vav, Taf, exile. And we find many forms of it throughout Torah. For example, this is the verse that I cited in Esther chapter 2 and verse 6, where it talks about Mordechai and those that had Asher Heglah, those that had been exiled by Nebuchadnezzar. So the root of that word Heglah is, of course, connected to galut. So this is the word for exile. Whereas the word for redemption is very similar, because it also has this Gimel Lamed, but it's written, actually here on the left, it's written Gimel Aleph Lamed Hey, and I wrote the Aleph in red so you would see it. Sometimes it's written with a Vav, but this is Geula. So Geula is the opposite of Galut. Galut is exile, and Geula is redemption. And I accentuated the Aleph because, of course, Aleph really stands for Hashem. So it's like it's like Geula, which is the state of redemption, is like you see the presence of Hashem, right? But the commonality between the two words, and this is just an amazing idea, is their common root is Gimel Lamed. But if we look a little bit more at this combination, right? We see Galut, we see Geula. We know that there are other words that are all connected, it would seem, that come from the same root. For example, we have a word galui, revealed, right? It's a very important basic word, galui, legalot, to reveal something. In fact, in modern Hebrew, a postcard is a gluya, which is very much like the word galui for revealed, because it doesn't have an envelope, right? So there's nothing to open. So it's completely out in the open. It's revealed, right? Now this is interesting. Then we have also, based on the same root of Gimel Lamed, we have a wheel, which is Gimel Lamed, Gimel Lamed. So it almost it's like a repetition, and that's what a wheel is. It turns. Yeah. So
like Gilgul HaNefesh.
Exactly, right. The whole concept of reincarnation is actually the recycling that turns on the wheel of life of a soul. The same word exactly. So a galgal is a wheel, and ligalel or liglol is to roll. So there's something about this root that we already see manifesting itself in this really interesting ways, and this is the same word that gives us exile. The same root that gives us exile gives us redemption. And also we see these other manifestations. There's something that is wide open about it. It's galui, it's revealed. And there's also some movement. There's this a kind of like a repetitive action, a rolling, right? But the most amazing thing of all of this is that when we look at the root of all of these words so far, we see Gimel Lamed, right? Now, Gimel Lamed this is an unbelievable word, because Gal, so when Jacob finally made peace with Lavan back in Genesis chapter 51, what did they do? He made a kind of like a testimony, like a monument, and he called it Gal-Ed. And that's back in Genesis 51. He called it Gal-Ed, and Lavan called it in his language Yagar Sa'aduta, and it was a pile of rocks. And it was to testify that they would not go past that point and to harm each other, right? He called it Gal-Ed, which literally means this pile is a witness, right? So in that case, in Genesis 51, this word Gal is literally a pile of rocks. So that is like lifeless. It's dry. And by the way, it's also used in a lot of the rabbinical literature to convey the idea of a pile of bones as well. It's dry. But yet the same word exactly is the opposite. It's water. It's a wave. A gal is like Gal Gadot, okay? It is a wave. Yeah. And so there we find in the book of Jonah, chapter 2 and verse 4, where he's talking about your waves are coming over me. In the Song of Songs, chapter 4 and verse 12, the whole idea of a sealed fountain. Also in the vision of the menorah in the book of Zechariah, it's like a round container of oil on the menorah. But so this word Gal in itself, I mean, are you with me? Because this is so fascinating. Because the same word, which is the root of both exile and redemption, the same root, which is the root of exile and redemption itself, has totally contradictory meaning. On the one hand, there's nothing as dry and lifeless as a pile of rocks. And on the other hand, the very same word with no change whatsoever in anything, not in its spelling, not in its pronunciation, is a wave of water. So, what is this really all about? It is so incredibly fascinating, and it also means to roll, as I mentioned. So I think one of the most amazing verses of all is, and this is where I just want to bring it together for you, in Psalms 22. In verse 9. And of course, I never tire of talking about the power of the Psalms. Just yesterday in one of our Zoom classes, we were talking about King David, and the whole goal of our class in the book of Samuel has been to try and really connect with the soul of King David and really understand that soul, because he's Moshiach, and he is he's that power which basically brings about, is the tool of Hashem's hand to bring about the redemption. So it's really important for us to understand the essence of King David. And the book of Psalms is like the greatest spiritual tool in our arsenal of prayer, because King David's soul was so comprehensive, and it was so inclusive of every manifestation of the human condition, the good and the bad, that he really encompasses everything that a person goes through. And that's why the Psalms are so personal. But in this chapter 22 and verse 9, speaking about the inadequacies of a translation, right? So I have this verse, chapter 22 of Psalms and verse 9, and here in my art scroll, which is actually, I consider it to be basically the best translation that one can use in terms of accuracy, but yet this verse is translated 22:9 as, if one commits himself to Hashem, he will deliver him. He will rescue him, for he desires him. But these words that are being translated as if one commits himself to Hashem in Hebrew actually reads Gol el Hashem, which literally means roll to Hashem. Roll. And they probably didn't know how to deal with that, so they translated it commit. Okay, I don't see it. It's roll. And I think that this is a similar verse in Proverbs in 16:3, where there, at least the verse is translated as turn your deeds toward Hashem. But again, it's roll. And I think that this is actually the origin of the expression roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Like roll with it.
Sure sounds like it.
It basically what King David is saying is like, no matter what, you have to just be fluid and be able to go with it, to roll with it. Roll with Hashem. In other words, whatever is happening, however destiny and fate is manifest, and however it seems to you that it is not what it should be, just go with it. Just roll it back to Hashem, like that wheel, like the Galgal. So the reason I shared all of this, right, is because, again, the exile of Egypt, mentioned 50 times in the Torah. It is we're learning more here than just the history of the people of Israel. We're learning something that is absolutely life-changing, I think in a spellbinding way. And again, it's so important to look at what we just saw, the amazing idea that the roots of both exile and redemption is a word that can either have the connotation of a dry, lifeless pile of stones or bones, or a beautiful wave of water or a fountain of water. And again, what was the difference between Galut and Geula, between exile and redemption? Basically, it's the Aleph. And that's why, again, the sages in their deepest teaching, I'm trying to really kind of capsulize this in a succinct way, but in their deepest teachings, the sages say, exile is when the knowledge of Hashem is completely obscured. That was Pharaoh's goal. Pharaoh's goal was to so distract and break the spirit of the people that they did not consider Hashem at all. Again, that's at the end of Parashat Shemot, where they came out and they said, thanks a lot, like you made our very fragrance abhorrent in the eyes of Pharaoh. We're done for. We're finished now. All is lost. And Hashem said, now you understand. Because redemption can only happen when we understand that there is only Hashem. Ein od milvado, we say in Hebrew. There's nothing else but Hashem. But you actually see all of these lessons in the Hebrew itself, in the difference between a gal, which is a dry pile, and a gal, which is a refreshing wave, in the difference between exile and redemption, and in this whole concept of that it basically, what I'm trying to say, what I think King David is trying to tell us in Psalms 22, is that it can go either way. This is how it is, and it's a thin line between the state of mental constriction, which is everything that Egypt represents, that we can succumb to, and the state of understanding the life-giving flow of water, of which is represented by which Hashem's presence represents. And it's just about letting that Aleph in, letting the light of Hashem in. That's the whole difference between exile and redemption. And that's it. Again, it's so transformative when we see the lessons of the Hebrew.
Mm-hmm. And it also points to a very foundational teaching about the redemption. You've just hinted at it. The idea is that our response to Hashem will set up our own personal experience in how we, and even as a nation, the people of Israel, if they don't have the Aleph, if they don't hold on to Hashem, the redemption will come harshly, and it'll be rocky for them, if you will. But if they are invested and they know it's all from Hashem, then they'll just roll into the redemption will be an easy redemption. And this is exactly what I hear when you're talking about
exactly.
that.
And again, I started talking about the news. Again, the whole idea is it's almost like there's a goal. Leave Hashem out of it. Leave Hashem out of everything. As soon as you leave Hashem out of it, everything just leads to despair, to total despair. But when you understand that everything is part of the process, and you let the Aleph in, that's the whole secret of history, which in Hebrew is historia. Historia literally can be seen. The word, I didn't prepare it in advance, can be broken into hester ya, which means the presence of Hashem is hidden. That is the process of history, that Hashem hides himself in history. By the way, that word historia also sounds tremendously close to hysteria, which is really what history.
I was about to say that.
That is history when we don't understand that it's all Hashem moving.